The destruction of the colony ship shattered Earth's peace. In an instant, 500 lives were snuffed out, including 7-year-old Emily Chen. The unprovoked Saleh attack ignited a firestorm of rage across human space. Within hours, the United Earth government severed all diplomatic ties with the Saleh Confederacy. Military forces mobilized on a scale not seen since the Unification Wars. But behind closed doors, Earth's leaders knew conventional weapons wouldn't be enough. They needed something unprecedented. Admiral Caleb Scott's comlink chirped as his shuttle descended through roiling Pacific waves. The grizzled commander frowned at the classified coordinates. No UEG facility was supposed to exist here. "Welcome, Admiral," said Defense Minister Chen, her face grim. "What you're about to see is Earth's best-kept secret and our only hope for justice." The largest screen filled with an image that made Scott's breath catch. A massive spherical structure hung suspended in a void-black chamber. Its surface bristled with weapon emplacements and sensor arrays. "Is that—" Scott trailed off, scarcely able to believe his eyes. Chen nodded. "A warship the size of a small planet. We call it Retribution. It's powered by an artificial singularity and armed with weapons that can reduce entire star systems to cosmic dust." Scott's mind reeled at the implications. "How long?" The Admiral's jaw clenched. "My orders? Take command. Assemble your crew. When Retribution launches, you'll lead Earth's counterattack against the Saleh." As Scott absorbed the magnitude of his mission, alarms blared. A lieutenant burst in. "Minister, a Saleh ship just entered the system under a flag of truce. They're requesting talks." Chen's eyes narrowed. "Stalling tactics. Still, we must follow protocol. Admiral, meet with their envoy at Neutral Station Gamma. Assess their intentions, but don't let them delay our preparations." "I am Craxon," the Saleh diplomat hissed. "Please, hear me out. The attack was not sanctioned by our government. A rogue faction—" "Save your lies," Scott snapped. "I saw the wreckage. I saw the bodies." Craxon's tongue flicked nervously. "It's the truth. This faction seeks to provoke war between our peoples. If conflict erupts, both our civilizations will be devastated." Scott's fists clenched as he warred with himself. Every fiber of his being screamed for vengeance, but a small voice urged caution. What if Craxon spoke true? The consequences of unleashing Retribution would be unimaginable. The fate of 2 civilizations now rested on his shoulders. Trust the Saleh or unleash unprecedented destruction? As humanity's mightiest warship prepared to sail forth, Admiral Caleb Scott grappled with the weight of vengeance, justice, and the future of his species among the stars. Admiral Scott's shuttle docked with Earth's orbital command station. As he stepped onto the bustling bridge, a junior officer rushed up to him, datapad in hand. "Sir, urgent communique from intelligence," the young man said, his voice tight with tension. Scott's brow furrowed as he scanned the encrypted message. His eyes widened. "Verify this immediately," he ordered, striding towards the secure briefing room. Inside, he found Minister Chen already waiting, her face a mask of concern. "You've seen it?" she asked. Scott nodded grimly. "If this is accurate, we may have just dodged a bullet." Chen activated the room's holographic display, bringing up a 3-dimensional map of Saleh space. "Our deep cover assets intercepted a coded transmission from within the Saleh government. It seems Craxon wasn't lying after all." The Admiral leaned forward, studying the flickering data streams. "A rogue faction, but there's more to it, isn't there?" "Indeed," Chen said, manipulating the display to zoom in on a particular sector. "Meet General Zaxthor, a high-ranking Saleh military leader. According to our intelligence, he's the one behind the attack on our colony ship. But it goes deeper than that. Zaxthor is using the incident as a catalyst for a full-scale coup against the current Saleh leadership." Scott's mind raced, reassessing everything he thought he knew about the situation. "So we're looking at a potential civil war within the Saleh Confederacy, with us caught in the crossfire." The defense minister agreed. "I've already convened an emergency meeting with Earth's top brass. We need to decide on our next move quickly." Hours later, Scott found himself in a room filled with Earth's most powerful military and political leaders. The tension was palpable as they debated their options. "And if it's not," Scott countered, "if we launch retribution and it turns out we've been manipulated into destroying an entire civilization, we'd be no better than the monsters we're fighting against." The room fell silent, the weight of the decision hanging heavy in the air. Finally, President Emerson spoke. "Admiral Scott, what do you propose?" Scott took a deep breath. "A covert operation. We send in a small team to infiltrate Saleh space, gather hard evidence about this coup, and if possible, make contact with loyalist factions within their government." After hours of heated debate, the plan was approved. Scott immediately set about selecting the right person to lead such a crucial mission. His mind settled on Commander Jack Harper, a seasoned officer with a track record of successful high-risk operations. In the station's secure briefing room, Scott laid out the mission parameters to Harper. "This is quite possibly the most important operation in human history, Commander. The fate of 2 civilizations rests on its success." Harper nodded, his eyes sharp and focused. "I understand, sir. Who else will be on the team?" "You'll have your pick of our best operatives," Scott replied, "but I'd strongly recommend Dr. Ethan Cole for your xenolinguist. His understanding of Saleh language and culture is unparalleled, and for infiltration, you'll want Chameleon." Scott allowed himself a small smile. "Oh, Chameleon is very real, and exactly what you'll need for this mission." Within hours, Harper had assembled his team and was preparing for departure aboard the UES Shadow, a state-of-the-art stealth ship designed to mimic Saleh technology. As the ship prepared to launch, Scott addressed the small crew. "What you're about to undertake may well determine the course of human history," he said solemnly. "Your mission is to infiltrate the Saleh homeworld, confirm the existence of this coup, and if possible, make contact with loyalist factions. The information you bring back will decide whether we launch retribution or find another way." As the shadow slipped silently into the void, Scott returned to the command center. He watched the ship's signal fade from their screens, knowing that the next time he heard from Harper could change everything. Days passed with agonizing slowness. Scott found himself constantly checking for updates, all too aware of the Retribution's massive form hanging in orbital dry dock, primed and ready for launch. Finally, a heavily encrypted transmission came through. Scott leaned in close to the communications officer as the message was decrypted. "Successfully landed on Saleh homeworld," Harper's voice crackled through the speaker. "Infiltration proceeding as planned. Have uncovered evidence of General Zaxthor's coup plot. Situation more complex than initially believed. Request additional time for investigation." Scott felt a mix of relief and renewed tension. They had confirmation, but the situation was far from tenacity. He keyed in a response. "Understood, Commander. Proceed with caution. Time is of the essence, but accuracy is paramount. We're counting on you." As he ended the transmission, Scott turned to find Minister Chen watching him. "Well?" she asked. "Harper's team is in," Scott replied. "They've confirmed the coup plot, but there's more going on. They need more time." Chen's expression tightened. "Time may be a luxury we don't have, Admiral. The Hawks in the government are pushing hard for immediate action. They're not convinced by our intelligence reports." Scott's fist tight. "Then we need to buy Harper more time, whatever it takes." As they walked towards another contentious meeting with Earth's leadership, Scott couldn't shake the feeling that they were balanced on a knife's edge. One wrong move, one piece of missing information, and everything could come crashing down. The fate of humanity and the Saleh now rested on the shoulders of Harper and his team, operating deep in enemy territory. Scott only hoped they could uncover the truth before it was too late. The chaos unfolding on the Saleh homeworld mirrored the turmoil in Commander Jack Harper's mind as he led his team through the twisting alleys of the capital city. The distant sound of explosions and angry shouts filled the air, a testament to the growing unrest instigated by General Zaxthor's supporters. Harper's comm unit crackled to life. "Commander, the riots are spreading." Chameleon's voice came through, tense but controlled. "We need to move fast if we're going to infiltrate the general's headquarters." Agreed, Harper replied, his eyes scanning the turbulent streets ahead. He turned to Dr. Ethan Cole and their Sele ally Lyra. Change of plans. We're splitting up. Lyra's serpentine features contorted in concern. Is that wise, Commander? The danger is increasing by the moment. Harper nodded grimly. It's a risk we have to take. Cole and I will proceed with the infiltration. Chameleon, you and Lyra focus on gathering intelligence from the streets. See if you can find a way to quell these riots. As the team prepared to separate, Harper found himself hesitating. His gaze lingered on Lyra, an unexpected twinge of worry coursing through him. The Sele scientist had become more than just an ally in their short time together. Be careful out there, he said, his voice softer than intended. Lyra's multifaceted eyes seemed to shimmer with an unspoken emotion. You as well, Commander. May the stars guide your path. With a final nod, Harper and Cole melted into the shadows, making their way towards Zaxthor's compound. The riots provided ample cover, but also added an element of unpredictability to their mission. As they approached the headquarters, Cole produced a small device. These access codes should get us in, he whispered, his fingers dancing over the holographic interface. The security barrier flickered and dissolved, allowing them entry. Harper's hand rested on his concealed weapon as they navigated the eerily quiet corridors. The contrast between the chaos outside and the sterile calm within set his nerves on edge. Meanwhile, aboard the Retribution, Admiral Caleb Scott stood rigid before the ship's main viewport. The massive form of Earth's secret weapon filled his vision, a constant reminder of the destruction at his fingertips. Admiral Scott, a stern voice broke the silence. Scott turned to face General Marcus Graves, a man whose reputation for hardline tactics preceded him. General, Scott acknowledged, his tone carefully neutral, to what do we owe this unexpected visit? Graves' eyes narrowed. I bring orders from the UEG, Scott. Certain factions have grown tired of waiting. They want Retribution launched immediately. Scott's teeth clenched. With all due respect, General, we have an ongoing covert operation. Launching now could jeopardize... I don't give a damn about your covert operation, Graves snapped. The Sele attacked us. They need to pay. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. You have 24 hours to comply, Admiral. After that, I'll relieve you of command myself. As Graves stormed out, Scott felt the weight of command bearing down on him like never before. His hand hovered over the comm unit, hoping against hope for word from Harper's team. Back on the Sele homeworld, Harper and Cole had reached the heart of Zaxthor's compound. The general's private office loomed before them, its ornate door a stark contrast to the utilitarian surroundings. We're in, Harper breathed as the lock disengaged. They slipped inside, immediately moving to the computer terminals. Cole's eyes widened as he began sifting through the data. Commander, look at this. Detailed plans for the coup, communication logs, even schematics for the weapon used in the colony ship attack. Harper felt a surge of vindication. Download everything. We need... A shrill alarm cut through the air. The office door burst open, revealing General Zaxthor himself, flanked by a squad of heavily armed guards. Humans, the general hissed, his forked tongue flicking in agitation. I should have known your kind would meddle in affairs beyond your understanding. Harper didn't hesitate. He overturned a nearby desk, providing cover as he opened fire. Cole ducked behind a pillar, frantically working to complete the data transfer. The firefight was intense but brief. A stray shot caught Cole in the leg, and Harper knew their time was up. Grabbing the wounded xenolinguist, he made a desperate dash for the exit. Chameleon! Harper shouted into his comm as they fled down the corridors. We need extraction now! Outside, the riots had reached a fever pitch. Chameleon and Lyra fought their way through the crowd in a commandeered Sele military vehicle. They arrived just as Harper and Cole emerged from the compound, laying down suppressing fire to cover their escape. The entire planet will be on lockdown soon, Lyra warned as they sped towards the outskirts. And Zaxthor will certainly jam all outgoing communications. Harper nodded grimly, tending to Cole's wound. We need to find a place to hole up, assess our options. I know a place, Lyra said, steering them towards a range of craggy hills. An abandoned mining facility. It should provide adequate shelter and might have equipment we can use. As they approached the dilapidated structure, Harper's mind raced. They had the evidence needed to prevent a war, but no way to transmit it. Stranded on a hostile world with time running out, he knew the real challenge was only beginning. Inside the mining facility, Harper and his team worked quickly to secure their position. Cole's wound was tended to, the stolen data secure. As night fell on the Sele world, Harper found himself drawn to the facility's entrance, staring out at the alien sky. Lyra approached, her scales shimmering in the moonlight. "Your people," she said softly. "They will not wait forever, will they?" Harper shook his head. "No, they won't. And if we can't get this information to them soon—" He left the thought unfinished, but Lyra understood. Her hand, cool and smooth, rested on his arm. "We will find a way, Commander. We must." As Harper looked into Lyra's eyes, he felt a connection that transcended species. In that moment, with the fate of two civilizations hanging in the balance, he made a silent vow. They would succeed, not just for Earth or the Sele, but for the hope of something greater than either. Harper's gaze lingered on the alien sky for a moment longer before he turned back to the mining facility's cavernous interior. The abandoned structure groaned and creaked, its metal surfaces coated with years of dust and neglect. His team had taken refuge here, but he knew they couldn't stay hidden for long. Dr. Ethan Cole sat propped against a rusted console, his face pale from the makeshift treatment of his leg wound. Despite his condition, the xenolinguist's eyes sparked with intensity as he called out to Harper. Harper strode over, eyebrow raised. "I'm all ears, Doctor." Cole gestured to the facility around them. "This place isn't just a mine, it's got a communications array. Old, sure, but with some modifications, we might be able to boost our signal strength enough to punch through the planetary lockdown." Chameleon, who had been keeping watch near the entrance, joined the conversation. "It's a long shot, but it might be our only chance to get the intel off-world." Harper nodded, his mind already racing through the possibilities. "All right, let's make it happen. Cole, you're our communications expert. What do you need?" As Cole outlined the necessary modifications, Lyra approached, her scales glinting in the dim light. "I can assist with the Sele technology integration. My scientific background should prove useful." Harper felt a flutter in his chest as their eyes met, but he quickly pushed the feeling aside. There was no time for distractions. "Good. You and Cole take point on the communications array. Chameleon, I want you on perimeter watch. I'll help with the heavy lifting and keep an eye on our six." The team sprang into action, scavenging parts from throughout the facility. Harper and Lyra worked side by side, their movements becoming more in sync as the hours passed. As they wrestled with a particularly stubborn piece of equipment, Harper found himself admiring Lyra's commitment and ingenuity. "You're full of surprises," he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. Lyra's multifaceted eyes shimmered with what might have been amusement. "As are you, Commander. I'm beginning to understand why your Admiral Scott placed such faith in your abilities." Their conversation was cut short as Chameleon burst into the room, his expression grim. "We've got company. Zaxthor's forces are sweeping the area. They haven't pinpointed our location yet, but it's only a matter of time." Harper's face hardened. "How long?" "An hour, maybe 2 if we're lucky." "Then we work faster," Harper declared, turning to Cole. "Doctor, what's our status?" "Do it," Harper ordered. "We're out of options and out of time." As Cole and Lyra made the final adjustments to the communications array, Harper and Chameleon fortified their position as best they could. They sealed off secondary entrances and set up makeshift barricades, all too aware of the approaching danger. Just as they activated the modified array, the facility shook with a distant explosion. Zaxthor's troops had arrived. Harper made a split-second decision. "Chameleon, get Cole to the escape craft. Make sure that data reaches Admiral Scott no matter what." "What about you?" Chameleon asked, already moving to support the injured Cole. "Lyra and I will hold them off. Make sure the transmission goes through." Harper's eyes met Lyra's, an unspoken understanding passing between them. As Chameleon and Cole disappeared down a back passage, Harper and Lyra took up defensive positions. The sounds of Sile troops breaching the outer defenses echoed through the facility. "Harper," Lyra said softly, her hand brushing his arm, "if we don't make it—" The first wave of Sile soldiers burst through the main entrance. Harper and Lyra worked in perfect tandem, their covering fire keeping the enemy at bay, while Cole's jury-rigged communications array hummed with increasing power. Come on, Harper muttered, firing off another burst as he glanced at the transmission status. Suddenly, the console lit up green. "We're through!" Lyra shouted over the firefight. "The transmission is going out!" "Fall back!" Harper yelled, providing covering fire as Lyra dashed to a more defensible position. "Lyra, Harper began, but his words were drowned out by a deafening explosion that rocked the entire facility. For a moment, Harper thought it was the end, but then he realized the explosions weren't coming from inside the facility. They were coming from outside. Harper let out a laugh of disbelief, grabbing Lyra's hand as they made a dash for the exit. Outside, they saw the massive form of the Retribution hovering above, its weapons systems decimating Zaxthor's forces. As they sprinted towards the waiting shuttle, Harper caught sight of another Sele ship attempting to flee the planet. Even at a distance, he recognized the ornate design of General Zaxthor's personal transport. But before the general's ship could break atmosphere, it was intercepted by a squad of Sele fighters. Harper watched in amazement as the loyal Sele forces, now aware of Zaxthor's betrayal, apprehended the architect of this near-catastrophic conflict. Aboard the rescue shuttle, Harper found Cole and Chameleon already waiting. As they lifted off, he watched the scene below, human and Sele forces working together to round up the remaining coup supporters. Harper nodded, feeling the weight of the past few days finally lifting. He turned to Lyra, who was staring out the viewport at her homeworld. Harper took her hand, his thumb tracing the smooth scales. "Now, we build something new. Together." As the shuttle docked with the Retribution, Harper knew that the challenges ahead were just the beginning. The fragile peace between humans and Sele would need to be nurtured, and the deeper reasons behind the initial attack still lay hidden. But for the first time since this mission began, he felt a glimmer of hope for the future, a future where the boundaries between their species might one day fade away. As the Retribution's shuttle bay doors sealed behind them, Harper felt the familiar artificial gravity take hold. The adrenaline of their narrow escape began to fade, replaced by a bone-deep weariness. He glanced at Lyra, her scales shimmering under the harsh bay lights, and saw his own exhaustion mirrored in her multifaceted eyes. Admiral Caleb Scott was waiting for them as they disembarked, his weathered face a mix of relief and concern. "Commander Harper, Dr. Cole, Specialist Lyra, it's good to have you back. We have much to discuss." In the days that followed, the Retribution became a hub of frenetic activity. What was once a warship primed for vengeance now buzzed with diplomats, scientists, and cultural attachés from both Earth and Sele. Harper watched with a mix of amazement and apprehension as Admiral Scott deftly navigated the complex waters of interspecies negotiation. "It's a new era, Commander," Scott told him during a rare quiet moment. "We came here seeking retribution, but we found an opportunity for something far greater." Harper nodded, though his mind was elsewhere. The mission to uncover the true cause of the initial attack greatly troubled on him. When Scott assigned him and Lyra to lead the investigation, he felt a mix of anticipation and unease. Their first stop was a Sele colony on the outer reaches of their territory. As they walked through the alien streets, Harper marveled at how quickly he'd grown accustomed to Lyra's presence by his side. "This was once a thriving trading post," Lyra explained, her voice tinged with sadness. "But since the attack, commerce has all but ceased." As they traveled from outpost to outpost, Harper and Lyra's working relationship deepened into something more. Late nights spent analyzing data turned into conversations about their respective cultures, hopes, and fears. Harper found himself captivated by Lyra's quick mind and dry humor, while she seemed fascinated by his adaptability and courage. Their breakthrough came on a remote mining colony, a desolate rock on the fringes of Sele space. As they approached the main settlement, Something about the place set Harper's nerves on edge. "It's too quiet," he muttered, hand instinctively moving to his sidearm. Lyra nodded, her scales filled. "The atmospheric processors are running, but I don't detect any life signs." They moved cautiously through the empty streets, the silence broken only by the howl of wind through abandoned structures. At the colony's central administration building, they found their first clue and their first body. The Sele administrator lay slumped over his desk, data pads scattered around him. Harper approached cautiously, noting the lack of visible wounds. "It's like he just stopped," Lyra said, her voice hushed. A flashing light on one of the data pads caught Harper's attention. As he activated it, his eyes widened. "Lyra, look at this. It's a map of some kind of hidden facility." The facility was built deep into the planet's crust, shielded from standard scans. As they descended in a rickety mining elevator, Harper felt a growing sense of unease. Something about this place felt wrong on a fundamental level. The facility itself was a maze of sterile corridors and locked doors. They moved carefully, using Lyra's access codes to bypass security systems. In the central chamber, they found what they were looking for, and so much more. A massive artifact dominated the room, its surface a swirling mix of colors that hurt the eyes to look at directly. Banks of computers surrounded it, their screens displaying data in a mix of Sele and unknown languages. "What is it?" Harper breathed, awed despite himself. Lyra shook her head, her usual confidence shaken. "I've never seen anything like it. This technology, it's beyond anything the Sele possess." As they examined the artifact, Harper noticed a subtle thrumming in the air, a vibration just on the edge of hearing. He was about to mention it to Lyra when the first explosion rocked the facility. Alarms blared as smoke filled the corridors. Harper and Lyra found themselves pinned down by a group of heavily armed mercenaries, a mix of species they'd never encountered before. "They're after the artifact," Lyra shouted over the sound of weapons fire. Harper nodded grimly, returning fire as he tried to formulate a plan. They were outgunned and outnumbered, with no hope of immediate backup. As they fought their way through the facility, Harper noticed something odd. The mercenaries seemed to be growing more aggressive, their tactics becoming increasingly reckless. Lyra noticed it too. "It's the artifact," she said during a brief lull in the fighting. "I think it's affecting their minds somehow." Harper was about to respond when he saw a mercenary taking aim at Lyra from a hidden alcove. Without thinking, he threw himself in front of her. Pain exploded in his chest as the shot connected, and he crumpled to the ground. Through a haze of pain, Harper heard Lyra calling his name. He tried to respond, but darkness was creeping in at the edges of his vision. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was Lyra's face, her alien features twisted with very human concern. Lyra worked frantically to stabilize Harper's condition, her mind racing. Their communications were jammed, and extraction was impossible. She was on her own, responsible for both Harper's life and the security of the artifact. As she tended to Harper's wound, using a combination of Sele medicine and improvised human first aid, Lyra found herself reflecting on their journey together. What had started as a reluctant partnership had grown into something she never could have anticipated. The depth of her feelings for this human surprised and frightened her in equal measure. The artifact pulsed with increasing intensity, its influence spreading through the facility. Lyra could hear the surviving mercenaries and local Sele colonists outside, their behavior growing more erratic. Yet she and Harper seemed unaffected. As she worked to keep him alive, a theory began to form in her mind. "Hold on, Jack," she whispered, her cool hand resting on his feverish brow. "We're not done yet. There's still so much to learn, so much to discover, together." As Harper's condition stabilized, Lyra turned her attention to the artifact. Its pulsing had reached a fever pitch, the air thick with its otherworldly energy. She knew that understanding this device was the key to preventing further conflict, and perhaps to forging a lasting peace between their species. With renewed commitment, Lyra began to study the artifact's controls, all too aware of the chaos unfolding around them and the wounded human at her feet. Time was running out, and the fate of two civilizations hung in the balance. Balance. Lyra's scales bristled as she worked, her nimble fingers dancing across the alien controls. Harper's labored breathing behind her served as a constant reminder of the stakes. Suddenly, the artifact's pulsing reached a crescendo. Lyra stumbled back, overwhelmed by the waves of energy radiating from the device. Through the haze, she saw Harper stirring. "Jack!" She rushed to his side, helping him sit up. "How do you feel?" Before Lyra could respond, an explosion rocked the facility. The door to their chamber buckled under the assault of the mind-controlled colonists and mercenaries outside. "We need to move," Harper said, grimacing as he stood. "That thing isn't safe here." Harper checked his weapon. "Lead the way." Harper and Lyra moved in perfect synchronization, covering each other as they navigated the madness. When a mercenary charged them, Lyra ducked low, allowing Harper to fire over her head. As a colonist lunged from a side passage, Harper spun, putting his body between the attacker and Lyra. They fought their way to a maintenance shaft, the artifact pulsing in their arms. As they descended, Harper noticed something odd. "Lyra, look at this." He pointed to a symbol etched into the artifact's surface. "Does that look Sci to you?" Lyra's eyes widened. "No, and it's not human either. This technology, it's beyond anything I've ever seen." "Commander Harper, good to see you alive. We've got a situation." Scott briefed them on the events unfolding on Earth. General Graves's coup attempt, the civil unrest, and the Retribution's daring return to confront the conspirators. "We're en route to your position now," Scott said, "but we're picking up some unusual readings. Multiple unidentified ships approaching your location." Scott's expression darkened. "That complicates things. Hold your position, Commander. We'll be there as soon as we can." As the transmission ended, Harper turned to Lyra. She was staring at the artifact, her scales shimmering with a mix of fascination and fear. Harper placed a hand on her shoulder, feeling the smooth texture of her scales beneath his palm. "We do what we've been doing. We adapt, we survive, and we find a way to turn this thing off before it causes any more damage." They set to work, analyzing the artifact's energy patterns and searching for any weakness they could exploit. As they worked, Harper couldn't help but marvel at how far they'd come. From reluctant allies to something more. The lines between human and Sci seemed to blur with each passing moment. Hours passed in a blur of data analysis and tense silence. The bunker's sensors alerted them to the approach of the unidentified ships. Harper and Lyra exchanged a look, knowing that whatever came next would change the course of both their civilizations forever. The ground shook as the first ship landed nearby. Harper gripped his weapon tighter, positioning himself between the door and the artifact. Lyra stood beside him, her own weapon ready. The bunker door began to glow, the metal warping under some unknown force. Harper and Lyra braced themselves, ready to face whatever alien threat awaited them on the other side. As the door disintegrated, blinding light flooded the chamber. Harper squinted, trying to make out the shapes moving towards them. The artifact pulsed one final time, and then went silent. "We have been waiting a long time for this moment." Harper and Lyra stood their ground, united in the face of the unknown, as the true architects of the conflict between their species finally revealed themselves. Before Harper could respond, the bunker's communication system crackled to life. Admiral Scott's voice came through, tense and urgent. "Commander Harper, we've got a situation up here. Multiple unidentified vessels have entered the system and are forming a blockade around the colony. We're holding position, but the situation is volatile." Harper exchanged a glance with Lyra, their earlier confrontation momentarily forgotten in the face of this new development. He turned to address the aliens, but another tremor shook the facility, more violent than before. Lyra's scales rippled with alarm. "The artifact! It's reacting to something!" They rushed to the sealed container, watching as the object pulsed with increasing intensity. The aliens followed, their movements fluid and purposeful. "You must not interfere," one of them said, reaching out towards the artifact. Harper moved to block their path, his hand on his weapon. "Not so fast. We need answers. Who are you? What's your connection to this device?" The lead alien's eyes, deep pools of swirling color, fixed on Harper. "We are the architects. This device is our legacy and our burden. Before they could elaborate, Admiral Scott's voice cut through again. Harper, they're charging weapons. We're intercepting an energy beam aimed at the colony surface. Brace for impact. Lyra worked frantically at the containment controls. It's transforming. The energy from that attack must have triggered something. The artifact's surface rippled and shifted, its form elongating and unfolding. Suddenly, a holographic projection filled the room, showing a planet racked by cataclysmic explosions. Our homeworld, one of the architects said, their voice heavy with sorrow, lost to us forever. Harper's eyes widened as understanding dawned. You've been manipulating us, both humans and Sci. Why? The lead architect stepped forward. We sought refuge. Our world was dying, our people facing extinction. We believed that by weakening your species through conflict, we could claim your worlds as our own. Lyra hissed, her scales flushing with anger. You're responsible for all of this? The war, the deaths, the destruction? Before the architects could respond, the bunker rocked with another impact. Admiral Scott's voice came through, strained and urgent. Harper, we're under full attack. More alien ships are arriving. We can't hold them off much longer. Time is something we don't have, Commander, Scott replied grimly. I'm considering deploying the artificial singularity weapon. It's our last resort. Harper nodded, understanding the stakes. He turned to the architects, his voice firm. You started this. Now you're going to help us end it. How do we control this device? The lead architect hesitated, then nodded. The interface requires a mental link, but be warned, the process is dangerous for non-architects. Your minds may not be able to withstand the connection. As Harper and Lyra prepared to attempt the link, the sounds of battle raged above. The Retribution's weapons fire reverberated through the facility, punctuated by the alien ship's energy weapons. Harper took a deep breath, looking at Lyra. In her alien features, he saw determination, fear, and something else, a connection that transcended their species' differences. Together? He asked, extending his hand. Lyra's cool, scaled hand clasped his. Together. They approached the artifact, its surface now a swirling vortex of energy. The architects guided them, explaining the process in hurried telepathic bursts. As Harper and Lyra reached out to touch the artifact, time seemed to slow. The chaos of the battle faded away, replaced by a rush of information and sensation. Harper felt his consciousness expand, intertwining with Lyra's and reaching out towards the alien fleet. In orbit, Admiral Scott watched in awe as the alien ships suddenly went dark, their weapons powering down. The Retribution's crew cheered, but Scott's relief was tempered by concern for Harper and the others on the surface. In the bunker, Harper and Lyra stood frozen, their minds linked with the artifact and the vast network it controlled. The architects watched in amazement as the humans and Sci accomplished what their own people had failed to do, unite in the face of adversity. As the alien fleet hung motionless in space and the dust settled on the colony's surface, a new chapter in galactic history began to unfold. The fates of 3 species now hung in the balance, with Harper and Lyra at the center of it all, their minds still lost in the cosmic interface of the architect's legacy. Artifact's cosmic interface. The sudden silence was deafening. Harper blinked, his vision slowly returning as the vast network of information receded from his mind. Beside him, Lyra swayed, her scales shimmering with an otherworldly glow. They had done it, established a mind link with the alien artifact and accessed its full potential. Harper nodded, feeling the weight of their shared consciousness. Through the artifact, they had created a powerful psychic barrier, immobilizing the alien ships in orbit. But the effort was taking its toll. Every cell in his body screamed in protest, and he could sense Lyra's pain mirroring his own. Before Harper could respond, Admiral Scott's voice crackled through the comm system. Commander, whatever you've done down there, it's working. The alien fleet is dead in the water. We're mounting a counteroffensive. Harper gritted his teeth, fighting to maintain his focus on the psychic barrier. Admiral, we've accessed their network. These aliens, they're called The architects. The ones attacking us are just a small faction led by someone named Zorn. The rest of their species wants peace. Understood, Commander. We'll use that information. Hold that barrier as long as you can. Scott out. In orbit, the Retribution's bridge was a flurry of activity. Admiral Scott barked orders, coordinating with the hastily assembled human and Sci fleet that had arrived as reinforcements. The architects' ships hung motionless against the starfield, their weapons dark. Target their propulsion systems and weapons arrays, Scott commanded. Disable, don't destroy. Let's show them we're better than Zorn and his warmongers. The combined fleet surged forward, energy weapons lancing out to strike the vulnerable points of the alien vessels. Explosions blossomed silently in the void, crippling but not annihilating their targets. On the uncharted planet, Dr. Cole emerged from the mouth of a massive cave, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and relief. The rest of his team followed, their faces streaked with dirt and sweat but alive with renewed hope. "We found it," Cole announced, holding up a chunk of iridescent rock. "The mineral deposits in these caves, they're beyond anything we imagined. And more importantly, there's breathable air down there. We can survive." As Cole's team worked to establish a more permanent base in the cave system, they cobbled together a makeshift communications array from their damaged ship. Static crackled as they attempted to hail the Retribution. Back in the bunker on the colony world, Harper and Lyra strained to maintain the psychic barrier. The architects watched in silent fascination as the human and Sci minds intertwined with their ancient technology. "Jack," Lyra gasped, her scales paling. "I don't know how much longer we can hold this." Harper reached out, clasping her hand. The physical contact seemed to stabilize their connection, but he could feel the life force draining from both of them. "Just a little longer," he urged. "We have to give Scott time to end this." Through their link with the artifact, they sensed the mounting confusion and fear among the alien fleet. Zorn's faction was losing control, their certainty crumbling in the face of this unexpected resistance. In Earth orbit, John Anderson stood before a hastily convened council of human and Sci leaders. His voice rang out with conviction as he presented his case for a united defense force. "We stand at a crossroads," Anderson declared. "Our species have been manipulated into conflict by an outside force. But now we have the opportunity to forge a new path, together." As the council debated, reports flooded in from across the solar system. The combined human-Sci fleet was holding its own against the alien invaders. A spark of hope began to ignite among the war-weary populations of both species. On the bridge of the Retribution, Admiral Scott received a garbled transmission from Dr. Cole's team. His eyes widened as he processed the information about the mineral deposits and their potential applications against the alien technology. "This could be the key," Scott muttered. He turned to his communications officer. "Open a channel to the alien fleet, all frequencies." Scott's voice boomed across space, addressing friend and foe alike. "Attention, architect vessels. We know of your plight, your dying world. We offer understanding and a chance for peaceful coexistence. Zorn does not speak for all of you. Together we can find a solution that doesn't require conquest." The response was immediate and chaotic. A group of alien ships broke formation, their engines flaring to life as they distanced themselves from Zorn's flagship. The majority of the fleet remained immobilized by Harper and Lyra's psychic barrier, but cracks were beginning to form. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, "we're detecting power fluctuations in the enemy fleet. Some of the ships appear to be powering down their weapons voluntarily." Scott nodded grimly. "And the others?" The Admiral's hands gripped the command chair. "All ships, form up on the Retribution. We're going to use the defectors as cover for a final push against Zorn's flagship." As the battered Retribution moved into position, Scott felt the weight of command pressing down on him. The ship groaned under the stress of battle damage, systems flickering on the edge of failure. "Evacuation protocols, all non-essential personnel," Scott ordered. "I want escape pods ready to launch on my command." In the bunker, Harper and Lyra's connection to the artifact was reaching a critical point. Blood trickled from Harper's nose, and Lyra's scales had lost almost all their color. The lead architect approached, its form rippling with urgency. You must break the connection, it warned. Your minds cannot sustain this link any longer. Harper shook his head, his vision blurring. Can't. Not yet. Have to. Give them more time. Lyra's grip on his hand tightened. Together, Jack, until the end. Through their fading link with the artifact, they sensed the battle reaching its climax. The Retribution, flanked by the defecting alien ships, closed in on Zorn's flagship. The fate of 3 species hung in the balance, with Admiral Scott poised to make a decision that would shape the course of galactic history. As Harper and Lyra's consciousness began to slip away, their last coherent thought was of each other. Human and Saleh, united in a bond that transcended species. The artifact pulsed with energy, its true purpose yet to be revealed as the final moments of the conflict approached. The artifact pulsed with energy, its true purpose yet to be revealed as the final moments of the conflict unfolded. Suddenly, Admiral Scott's tactical display lit up with an incoming transmission. His eyes widened as he recognized the origin, Dr. Cole's team on the uncharted planet. Scott's mind raced, reassessing their options. He turned to his weapons officer, his voice sharp with urgency. Abort the attack on Zorn's flagship. We're changing tactics. The bridge crew scrambled to comply as Scott outlined his new strategy. Despite the extensive damage to the Retribution, they maneuvered into position, ready to deploy Dr. Cole's device. Launch the prototype, Scott ordered, his gaze fixed on the tactical display. A small, unassuming object shot out from the Retribution, hurtling towards the center of the alien fleet. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a wave of energy rippled outward, engulfing ship after ship. Alien vessels began to drift, their weapons and propulsion systems going dark. Scott allowed himself a small smile. It worked. We've bought ourselves some time. On the colony surface, Harper and Lyra remained locked in their psychic link with the artifact. Their physical forms were barely conscious, but their merged minds delved deeper into the alien technology than ever before. Lyra's thoughts intertwined with Harper's. Jack, do you see it? There's a failsafe. Harper's consciousness brushed against the mechanism Lyra had discovered. It's designed to shut down all connected alien tech. If we activate it, their shared consciousness wavered, teetering on the edge of oblivion. Yet they pressed on, driven by the knowledge that they alone could access this last desperate option. Admiral Scott's voice cut through the chaos on the bridge. We need that artifact. Prepare a joint human-Sile special ops team for immediate deployment. Objective: extract Harper, Lyra, and the alien tech. Chameleon, the skilled operative who had once hunted Harper, now stood ready to save him. She nodded grimly as she received her orders, her team a mix of human and Sile soldiers. As they prepared to drop to the colony's surface, the tactical situation shifted once again. A transmission from one of the alien defector ships reached the Retribution. Human vessel, a gravelly voice spoke in halting English. We oppose Zorn. We offer assistance, transmitting data on flagship vulnerabilities. Scott's tactical officer pored over the incoming information. Sir, this is exactly what we need. With this, we can formulate a precise plan of attack against Zorn's ship. Back on Earth, John Anderson stood before the newly formed Human Sile Defense Council. The chamber buzzed with tension and possibility. Today, we take our first steps not as separate species, but as a unified force, Anderson declared. Let our alliance serve as a beacon of hope across the stars. As the council members, human and Sile alike, rose in a standing ovation, the implications of this historic moment rippled across both civilizations. His words were cut short by the sound of Chameleon's team making their descent to the colony surface. The Special Ops Unit hit the ground running, their movements a fluid dance of human and Sile coordination. The team fought their way through the streets, human and Sile covering each other with practiced ease. Energy weapons flashed, illuminating the destruction around them. In the artifact chamber, Harper and Lyra's physical forms trembled as their merged consciousness grappled with the failsafe mechanism. Lyra's agreement came without words, a surge of drive that flowed through their link. Together, they triggered the failsafe. Energy surged through the artifact, spreading outward in an invisible wave. Across the system, alien technology began to shut down. On the Retribution's bridge, Scott watched in awe as Zorn's fleet went dark. But victory was short-lived. Zorn's flagship, its weapons disabled, but engines still functioning on reserve power, suddenly changed course. "Sir," the tactical officer's voice was tight with alarm, "Zorn's on a collision course with us. He's going to ram the Retribution." Scott's mind raced, assessing options in split seconds. The Retribution was badly damaged, unable to outmaneuver the incoming threat. Their allies were too far to intercept. "All hands, brace for impact," Scott ordered, his voice steady despite the fear gripping his heart. "Divert all remaining power to forward shields." The space around the Retribution lit up with weapons fire from the combined human-Sci fleet. Precision strikes hammered Zorn's flagship, each hit guided by the insider knowledge they'd gained. On the colony surface, Chameleon's team finally fought their way to the artifact chamber. They found Harper and Lyra unconscious, their hands still linked, the artifact pulsing with fading energy between them. As they lifted the unresponsive forms of Harper and Lyra, the ground shook beneath them. Above, the battle for the fate of 3 species reached its climax. Zorn's flagship, burning and breaking apart under the concentrated assault, continued its suicidal plunge towards the Retribution. Admiral Scott stood on his bridge, watching the distance close, knowing the next few moments would determine not just their fate, but the future of an entire galaxy. Admiral Scott's eyes narrowed as he watched the massive bulk of Zorn's flagship grow larger on the screen. Time seemed to slow as his mind raced through their options. Destroying the alien vessel would be a Pyrrhic victory at best, likely taking the Retribution with it. No, there had to be another way. "All power to shields and maneuvering thrusters," Scott barked, his voice cutting through the tension on the bridge. "We're going to deflect this bastard." The crew sprang into action, fingers flying across consoles as they rerouted every scrap of energy they could muster. The ship groaned and shuddered, systems pushed far beyond their intended limits. "Sir," the chief engineer's voice crackled over the comm, strained and urgent. "We've got maybe 30 seconds before critical systems start failing. Whatever you're planning, do it fast." Scott nodded grimly. "Understood. Helm on my mark, execute maneuver Delta 7. The distance between the two ships closed rapidly. On the colony surface, Chameleon and her team finally breached the artifact chamber. They found Harper and Lyra sprawled on the floor, hands still clasped, the alien device pulsing between them. "We need to move now," Chameleon shouted, gesturing for her team to secure the unconscious pair. As they lifted Harper and Lyra, a blinding surge of energy erupted from the artifact. The pulse expanded outward at impossible speed, engulfing the entire system in seconds. Aboard the Retribution, the tactical officer's eyes widened in disbelief. "Sir, the alien fleet, they're losing power across the board." Scott allowed himself a moment of hope before refocusing on the immediate threat. Zorn's flagship, mere moments from impact, suddenly veered off course as its systems went dark. "Now!" Scott roared. The Retribution's thrusters fired, executing a precise pivot. The ship's reinforced shields caught the edge of Zorn's vessel, deflecting it from a direct collision. Metal screamed against metal as the two behemoths scraped past each other, both sustaining heavy damage but avoiding total destruction. The bridge rocked violently, sparks flying from overloaded consoles. When the shaking subsided, Scott found himself sprawled on the deck, ears ringing. He pulled himself to his feet, surveying the damage. Scott nodded, allowing himself a grim smile. "We're still here. That's what matters." He turned to communications. "Open a channel to the alien defectors. It's time to end this." On the planet below, Chameleon's team raced through the streets, carrying the unconscious forms of Harper and Lyra. The once deadly alien soldiers now stood motionless, their advanced weaponry rendered useless by the artifact's failsafe. "Extraction team, this is ground team actual," Chameleon barked into her comm. "We have the package. 2 critical, need immediate evac and medical support." As they reached the extraction point, a shuttle swooped down, its engines kicking up clouds of dust. The team loaded Harper and Lyra aboard, their vital signs weak and erratic. Back on the Retribution, Admiral Scott stood before the view screen, facing the assembled leaders of the alien defectors. Their faces, if you could call them that, were a mix of relief and apprehension. Scott nodded solemnly. "We believe in second chances. Are you prepared to discuss terms of surrender and the integration of your people as refugees?" The alien's eye stalks quivered in what Scott had come to recognize as an affirmative gesture. "Yes, we have seen enough violence. It is time for a new path." As negotiations began, a flurry of activity erupted across the system. On Earth, John Anderson stood before a historic joint session of human and Salay leadership. The chamber buzzed with anticipation as he approached the podium. "Today," Anderson's voice rang out, strong and clear, "we stand united, not just as humans, not just as Salay, but as a single force for peace and progress in our galaxy." The assembly erupted in thunderous applause, marking the beginning of a new era of cooperation between the once bitter enemies. On the uncharted planet, Dr. Cole and his team found themselves suddenly surrounded by a joint human-Salay rescue party. As they were ushered to waiting transports, Cole clutched a secure container holding samples of the revolutionary mineral. "Careful with that," he warned a well-meaning soldier who offered to carry it. "This little rock might just change everything." Aboard the Retribution, now more of a floating wreck than a warship, Admiral Scott oversaw the capture of Zorn and his loyalists. The alien leader, stripped of his technological advantages, seemed smaller somehow as he was led away in restraints. "You'll face justice for what you've done," Scott said, his voice level but filled with quiet intensity. "But you'll face it fairly. That's the difference between us." Zorn's alien features twisted in what might have been a sneer. "You think this is over? You understand nothing of—" Scott cut him off with a wave of his hand. "Save it for the tribunal. Your reign of terror ends here." As the days turned to weeks, the Salay mining colony became a hub of frantic activity. Humans and Salay worked side by side, repairing damage and laying the groundwork for a joint scientific outpost. The sound of construction mixed with laughter and snippets of both languages as the two species learned to coexist. "Jack," Lyra's voice was barely a whisper, her scales a pale shadow of their usual vibrant hue. "I can still feel you, in my mind." Harper nodded, a mix of wonder and trepidation washing over him. "I know. It's like we're not quite separate anymore." As the two grappled with their new reality, the wheels of progress continued to turn. The massive hull of the Retribution, once a symbol of humanity's quest for vengeance, was slowly transformed. Construction crews swarmed over its battle-scarred surface, repurposing it into the foundation for a new space station. Admiral Scott stood at the viewport of a temporary command center, watching as the station began to take shape. A warm sense of pride filled him as he saw human and Salay workers moving in perfect synchronization, their efforts guided by the advanced knowledge shared by the alien refugees. "Sir," his aide approached, holding out a datapad, "the final draft of the treaty is ready for your review." Scott took the pad, scanning its contents. A smile tugged at the corners of his mouth as he read the station's official designation, New Horizon. As the days counted down to the historic signing ceremony, final preparations were made across the system. On Earth, human and Salay delegates packed for their journey to the new station. In the refugee camps, those aliens who had chosen peace prepared to take their first steps towards integration into a new society. And at the heart of the New Horizon station, a team of artists and engineers worked tirelessly to complete the centerpiece memorial. A hologram of young Emily, the human child whose death had nearly sparked an interstellar war, slowly took shape. Surrounding her image, symbols of unity between human, Salay, and alien cultures intertwined in a delicate dance of light and shadow. As the final touches were put in place, Admiral Scott stood before the memorial, lost in thought. The station hummed with activity around him, diplomats and dignitaries arriving for the upcoming ceremony. Yet in this quiet moment, he allowed himself to reflect on the long, painful journey that had led them here. Scott turned to find John Anderson approaching, the human diplomat's face etched with a mixture of exhaustion and hope. Anderson nodded, stepping up beside him. It won't be easy. There's still so much mistrust to overcome, so many wounds to heal. But it's a start, Scott said, straightening his uniform. A new horizon, just like they named this station, and I intend to see us reach it. As they stood there, contemplating the challenges and possibilities that lay ahead, the station's speakers crackled to life. Attention all personnel and guests, a crisp voice announced. The signing ceremony will commence in 1 hour. Please make your way to the main auditorium. Scott and Anderson shared a look, both men squaring their shoulders as they prepared to face this pivotal moment in galactic history. Well, Anderson said with a wry smile, shall we go make history? Scott nodded, taking one last look at the memorial before turning toward the future. Let's show the galaxy what we can accomplish together. As they walked side by side towards the auditorium, the station buzzed with anticipation. Human, Sci, and alien representatives mingled in the corridors, their conversations a blend of languages and ideas. The new horizon stood poised at the threshold of a new era, its very existence a testament to the power of cooperation and understanding. The signing ceremony awaited, ready to seal the alliance that would shape the course of galactic civilization for generations to come. Yet even as they prepared to celebrate this momentous occasion, questions lingered. What new challenges would arise from this unprecedented union? How would they navigate the complex waters of interspecies relations? And what other secrets might the vast, unexplored cosmos hold?
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.